My 8-year-old, I remember when he was trying to ride his bike and he goes, I can't do it. And I said, you can't do it yet. The power of that word yet. I can't do it is a period. It's an ending statement. It's done. Adding yet at the end puts that comma and leaves your narrative unfinished.
Hey there, high performers. This is Dr. Josh Funk. In this podcast, I will be interviewing people from the sports and business world who have experienced hardship and come out on top. Through their challenges, strategies, and mindset, I hope that it will give you the tools you need to perform for life. Hey, high performers. This is Dr. Josh Funk, and I am very, very excited to bring to you Ryan Defibaugh. He is a licensed professional counselor, and he has, honestly, an exceptional background that I really can't wait to share with you. I knew that he was somebody that I wanted to bring onto this podcast, and I don't think I realized how good this interview was going to be really until we talked a little bit more about his background, some of the people that he had the fortune of interacting with throughout his upbringing, through being a local product here at Magruder, and then finding his way through the college athletic days, then to Penn State, and to what he is doing now. But Ryan, welcome, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Josh. I'm really excited to be here. When I first heard your podcast going, I couldn't wait to get involved in it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A great part about it is you're friends with Dave Posen, who was actually our first guest. You all went to McDaniel together.
Yeah, we went to college together. Dave's always been a force, and you always knew he was going to do something great. And I've loved seeing the growth of Soldier Fit and excited to see where they're going to take it from here.
Yeah, he's been tremendous to me. Talked a lot about mentorship with him. He had mentioned his high school coach, Randy Trivers, who was at Northwest High School when I was in high school. He was at Wooten when Dave was there. Then he's been to the college level, and now he's at Gonzaga. You had the fortune of playing for Dan Harwood, who is the only MCPS basketball coach who's ever gotten to 500 wins. Tell me a little bit about what it was like playing for him and some things maybe that you took from your experience there.
Well, I'd say from my early days of even elementary and middle school, a goal of mine was to be on the Magruder basketball team. We used to go and watch the games and just the intensity and just the joy surrounding it. And so when I got to realize that goal was my senior year of high school. So I had been cut from the team a few times, didn't try out my junior year and got to make it my senior year. And playing for Coach Harwood, it's really probably the reason I'm sitting here today. Some of the lessons he taught me and how to handle myself and how to push through adversity. He was just an incredible mentor, an incredible coach for me.
He took Magruder from what did not seem like a very, very successful program when he first became coach and really created quite the dynasty in Montgomery County. I think he won 2 state championships while he was there. What is one central thing that you think was critical to him getting the most out of his players?
I think one of the things that stands out about Coach Harwood is the fact that he made you show up day in and day out. He made you bring your best. And even when you might have felt you were outmatched, he didn't care about the excuses. He wanted you to go compete. And so I learned how to compete and how to control my fears, my anxieties in a way, walking onto the court. My senior year, we played against Gaithersburg High School, who I think was like 25-0, ended up being state champions. I remember missing a three-pointer early in the game, and I guess I had that look on my face, and I'm running past the bench, and Coach Harwood said, "Get that look off your face now and go play." And that sticks with me as an adult still. What I'm putting out there, what kind of energy I'm giving out to others, what energy I'm giving to myself, and that positivity of just go out and compete and go be my best, I take with me every day from him.
So what I'm hearing a little bit there is something that was introduced to me as, whether or not you're a practice player or a gamer. I think too often we will equate a gamer to somebody who maybe only shows up in those big, big moments, and they're not focusing on the process, but they're focusing on that result of the big event, the big opportunity. Sounds like Coach Harwood's more of the mindset, hey, we need to compete every day. Every day is almost game day. Committing to being a practice player, committing to the process. How did that carry over then into your college career?
The process is huge to me. Showing up each day with a passion, showing up each day with a love for what I do, really going into my why, what my purpose is. And that doesn't tie into the result by itself. The process is really then what you do day to day, knowing the result will take care of itself when you focus on the process.
Right. And we hear it all the time. Commit to the process and the results will follow. I think oftentimes it's very, very important that sometimes we look at what other people are doing who are successful and trying to follow some of the process or the steps that they've taken to get to that point, instead of just focusing on some of the accomplishments they've had or the results they've had. You were fortunate to have a great college career and, surprisingly enough, major in exercise science and a minor in athletic training, which is not that much different than a lot of PTs.
No, and I love the field and I have a passion for it, but I walked into coaching. I never expected to coach. And I think when we go back to the process of our life, the process of our journey, we never know what tomorrow might bring. I think we have to be ready for it. And so when we focus in on that process, it's, yes, I majored in exercise science. I was focused on athletic training. That was my goal. But then something else got introduced to me. And after the first year of coaching as a graduate assistant, I said, this is for me. This is my passion. I never realized it. And I ran with it. And I was willing to kind of go off Route 95 and take some back roads. And it led me, to an incredible life so far.
Yeah. We didn't mention it there, but you were at Penn State, right? Your college coaching career took you, and small fun fact on me, but both of my parents met at Penn State. My dad played football there. My mom met him at a party. They were college sweethearts. Oh, wow. It's crazy that none of myself or my four siblings ended up going there with all of us playing sports. But nonetheless, I've had some tremendous memories at Penn State, and you had interacted with people who were at the pinnacle of their sport there. Between Coach Sanderson with the wrestling team, Coach Erica Walsh, who is the soccer coach and also the U.S. women's national team coach. Do me a favor and just start with, talking a little bit about what it's like to be around coaches of that caliber, and maybe a tidbit here or there that you took from each, your interactions with each of them.
Definitely. I walked into Penn State coming from Division III McDaniel College, and the change was drastic. And I walked in with a little bit of imposter syndrome, honestly, if you're familiar with that, kind of feeling like maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. And it took a lot of internal work and, some people to lean on to say, yes, you do. And I started getting that positive feedback from the players. They enjoyed my coaching, and it really allowed me to kind of take off from there. But also I was surrounded by mentors. As you mentioned, Cale Sanderson, he went 159-0 in college as a wrestler at Iowa State. He never lost. Erica Walsh, tremendous coach, but even a more tremendous person. I can say the same about Cale Sanderson. They're not just coaches. They care about the individuals they're around, but they definitely have a process to their success. So from Cale, I remember just a quick conversation with him. When I walked out of my office, Cale would be on my right and Erica would be on my left. And I turned and went into the wrestling office and I started talking to Cale a little bit about who he brings into Penn State and how he knows if they're right for his program. And very simply, he said there's 3 components to their college life. And I tell them this. There's your athletic self, there's your academic self, and there's your social self. And he says, choose 2. And the 2 that he wants them to choose. Right. And what I learned from there was prioritize. Are we putting our time into our priorities? Are we putting our efforts into things we say are most important to us? I've taken that conversation as a young adult, young coach, and incorporated it. It's one of the first things I do with my clients today is talk to them about priorities and time management. From Erica, I've just learned how valuable relationships are. So even off the field, how much building those strong relationships with your players, with your staff members, the other coaches you're with the whole community, and how that helps you build a program versus just building a team. And we talked about process versus result, and I bring it back to that. The process of building a team, the process of building a program, and not just thinking about day one result, but thinking about where you want to be in 10 years, 11 years.
I hear things like connecting with people, connecting with community, connecting with the world around you. I think that could draw a parallel to what a successful business would be like. You have these people who are high performers in a sports world. They're able to not only lead the coaches around them, lead the players, lead the program, lead recruits, lead ideally the student body to get behind what it is that they're doing. What do you think is the number one thing that you think helps create momentum for people to buy into a program and ideally set this brand new standard of excellence that you've not only seen now at the high school level, but at the college level as well?
I think trust. I think you can't get anywhere without people trusting you and believing in what you're doing. So one, defining what you're doing, having your reason, your why behind what you do, and feel so strongly about it, nothing can shake you. But then building that trust so others are willing to come in and join you on that. Without building those relationships, without building that trust, without giving some of that autonomy to the people around you to be them as well, I think there's limits to how far you can go. And each of these people, from Coach Harwood to Cale Sanderson to Erica Walsh, I've seen them give that trust and receive that trust from others.
I think a big thing with trust too sometimes is people are more likely to trust somebody where they are viewing that person as being more optimistic. We've talked about the concept of optimism and how that is something that is honestly contagious a lot of times. And when somebody sees that optimism, they want to be around that person more. It ends up becoming something that becomes the mindset of the entire team. And we've also seen situations, I'm sure, where you find the opposite. You have one bad seed on a team or somebody is extremely pessimistic and it catches like wildfire. What's been your experience with this concept surrounding optimism, and how is it something that you employ in some of the young athletes and other clients that you have in your role right now as a professional counselor?
It's funny. If I took off the jacket I have on right now, my shirt underneath says Optimism, just white lettering on a black T-shirt.
Yeah.
Optimism's probably the core foundation of what I build my counseling practice around, but it's also what I build my life around, what I try to raise my kids with, the foundation of my coaching. Optimism is so big in my life, and I think it's huge when we're talking about on the individual or on the bigger scale of building a team. And when I talk about optimism, I don't talk about kind of the storybook version of it where grass is greener, glass is half full. I really see optimism as like functional components. So we're looking at it as, change is possible. We're looking at it as setbacks are temporary. We're looking at it as like our actions matter. And there's things that are in our control and things that aren't in control, and be able to decipher between the two. So when we can break down optimism into those four components, it really allows us to apply it to our everyday life.
For the listeners out there, what are some strategies that they can potentially maybe create some self-awareness to themselves and ideally view things a little bit differently with regards to their current situation?
So when we start with a client, we first delve into the why. I want to know the purpose behind you, why you're doing what you're doing, what motivates you, what you're sacrificing. Once we have that internal kind of definition of ourselves, then we can branch out from that foundation and we can look into maybe some of the things that are holding us back. And so I'm very big into cognitive behavior theory. So looking at how our thoughts interact with our emotions, and both of those interact with our behaviors. So we start with thoughts and we look at what's holding us back within our thoughts. And when we're talking about performance, a lot of times it's fear, it's anxiety. And so we help the athletes that we work with redefine that fear, redefine that anxiety through our thought process.
You talk about anxiety, and I know this is something we've kind of deep dove down. There are certain things going on in the world right now with regards to public health that are creating anxiety in a lot of people. I can at least speak from my end, a business ownership standpoint. I'm worried about taking care of my team. I'm worried about making sure that we're doing the right things from a social and a community standpoint. Worried about following the latest rules and regulations. Anxiety often gets hit with a huge negative slant. What are your thoughts on anxiety and how we can potentially turn a word and a natural emotion into something that's more positive for us?
I love that you said natural emotion, because our emotions are things that happen to us. Our thoughts are things that happen to us. We're not in control of them. But when we can recognize those thoughts that are coming in and those emotions that we're feeling and be able to reframe them, that's the first step to allowing us to manage them. And so you're right. This time of uncertainty right now with our public health crisis, from our own well-being to our businesses, it's affecting how all of us go about our life right now. And so when we look at anxiety, I think I'm a little different in how I approach it. With our athletes, I look at anxiety as very much a positive emotion. We look at anxiety and we think about the symptoms right away. We think about the jitteriness. We think about the increased heart rate, the increased breathing rate, the dry mouth, all those things that come along. Those are symptoms of anxiety, right? So those are the things that happen to us when our body is functioning correctly. When we feel anxiety, it's because we feel a threat. We think there's a threat, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. Our body responds to that threat by releasing cortisol. Cortisol, what does it do? It sends oxygen to all your major muscles. And if you're not in a place where you can run or fight, you get jittery because your muscles want to work and you can't. You get a dry mouth because when you feel threatened, you don't need to digest food. Your heart rate goes up because your body's priming for action. And so when we can look at all these symptoms as our body working correctly and priming us for action, whether that's the fight or flight and our fight or flight response, now we can choose what the right action is. So when we can take those thoughts and say it's not a threat, it's a welcome challenge. It's something I need to be aware of. I look at cortisol, the hormone is almost, if it had a voice, it would say like, uh-oh, something's wrong, pay attention. And so what you refer to with your business is you're feeling that anxiety, you're feeling that worry. That's your body saying, pay attention. Something that's important to you needs to be looked at. And so I look at anxiety as a way to tell us to turn and look at it. Pay attention to it, because when we're paying attention to the threat, we can solve it, we can manage it.
On that similar subject, but kind of going a little bit more specifically at youth sports, anxiety, I think, is something that comes on as a result of a wide variety of different things. Performance being one of them, external pressures being another, sometimes just the overall optics surrounding things like being cut from a team or potentially being on the bench. What are some recommendations that you'll have to these youth athletes who are experiencing some of these external struggles and then some of these, I don't have a better word other than just the optics of how people view being cut from a team or sitting on the bench? I mean, let's take one of, if not the greatest basketball player ever. I mean, he shares that as something he turned into his most positive moment in terms of changing his trajectory and potentially driving his work ethic to heights never seen before by him.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the quote where he says, I've lost over 300 games. I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot 26 times and missed. And he lists all these failures. We're talking about Michael Jordan. And at the end, he says, I succeed because I failed, right? Because I failed. So he was able to be resilient in the face of adversity. And I think that's what we're trying to teach the young athletes that I work with is we're not going to avoid adversity. We're not going to avoid setbacks. We're not going to avoid mistakes. I say this as someone who has sat on the bench. I was cut from high school basketball, like I mentioned. I sat on the bench in high school soccer, even when I probably deserved the spot. But as a goalkeeper, only one of us can play. But that's where we delve into that why. I cared so much more about the sport than just being on the field or just getting those accolades. That sport meant more to me, being on the field, being on the court. So when we talk to these youth athletes, we really want to make sure that when they say, I love the game, we want to go deeper. We want to say, why do you love it? What about it? Not just the wins and losses. Because we go back to that process versus result. And when we start focusing on the result, that's where fear kicks in. What if I don't win? What if I don't get that recognition? What if I do get cut? What if I am on the bench? Do you still love the sport if you're not playing? Do you still love the sport if you're not a champion? When we focus on the result, we actually breed anxiety. And this is coming from someone who's very competitive. I don't let my 4-year-old beat me in Candyland. I love to win. But if we really want our athletes to excel and to grow and to learn to be resilient, we have to help them focus on the process that every day, the successes and the failures are part of our journey. I don't know if you've read The Alchemist. It's one of my favorite books.
I have, actually. That's an awesome book.
It drives me.
Right.
I think it's so true. We never know how long we'll be in a certain position. We never know what life is going to give us, but we're on a journey to discover our personal best, our personal journey.
And when I think of the book Alchemist, we're alchemizing experiences that ideally are going to transition into something so much greater when sports end, which is ideally a highly fulfilled life. And notice I didn't use the word necessarily happiness, because sometimes I think young people and the world around them focuses so much on this short-term gratification that is happiness that we fail to embrace the struggles and the challenges that ideally, especially in this very, very controlled environment that is 0 to 18, it's probably the most controlled environment of our life. In fact, it is. So instead of embracing those struggles or challenges and having the people surrounding us help us find what is great from these struggles and challenges, we lose the messaging by focusing on some of the external things that you were talking about.
Definitely. I think when I look back on my childhood, that's something I thank my parents for. They never rescued me. They let me live my life, my successes, my failures. And I made many failures. I made mistakes, but then I had to figure them out as well. They were always there as a support system, as a safety net, as a strong foundation, but they let me go live and they let me learn through life. And I think today we're really jumping in and rescuing our young students, our young athletes. We're not letting them feel that adversity. And that's where resilience is built. Resilience cannot be given to you. Resilience has to be kind of going through the crap and coming out the other side anyway, and choosing to keep moving forward and bouncing back to your original goal, even when faced with that adversity. And I think if we can find ways to allow our athletes to experience that, allow our youth to experience some of the setbacks while being a support system for them and helping them figure out how they can move forward. I think we're going to raise a new generation of very resilient young men and women.
And when you talk about resilient, I just know this from previous conversations with you. Earned versus given always comes up. You talked about it a little bit there. When I think of a situation where maybe it's given and not earned, it's making me think of like bulldozer parent. I've got the obstacle. I'm going to drive right on past it, whether or not it's a parent, teacher, or whoever. And I'm going to put so-and-so, son or daughter, into this position where sometimes this artificial resilience has been created as opposed to one that's authentic.
Definitely. And I know when we spoke and you talked about your ability to look at problems and say, I'll get through this. We will get through this. That's optimism at work. That's resilience at work. That is grit at work. And you couldn't have gotten that without showing yourself you could. So you had to show yourself probably from earlier experiences, whether it was in childhood that you learned from parents or other people, coaches, or young adulthood or in college or as a young business owner. Like you've learned that throughout your life that you can take steps to make success happen and that you can get through tough times. And when we don't give our young people the chance to show themselves they can, where are they going to learn it?
Absolutely. And I'll just give a quick shout out to my sister, to be quite honest. And we've had this conversation multiple times. She's doing an exceptional job of, I think, developing young females who are strong. They're not safe. I think everything from how she speaks to them to how she interacts with them to small things that I just noticed that I think overall are going to create optimism, resilience, somebody who is more focused on what they are doing as opposed to what happens. And for that, I'm, just very, if anything, in admiration for how she is approaching her role as a parent for these little people.
Definitely. With an 8-year-old and 4-year-old twins, myself, I love hearing that. And it's how we operate at home. We don't rescue them from mistakes or if they're upset or they're having trouble figuring something out. My 8-year-old, I remember when he was trying to ride his bike and he goes, I can't do it. And I said, you can't do it yet. The power of that word yet. I can't do it is a period. It's an ending statement. It's done. Adding yet at the end puts that comma and leaves your narrative unfinished. And you get to fill that narrative however you want. And he caught me doing that back to myself. So when I said, I think he was asking me if I could do a backflip into the pool. I was like, no, I'm a little old now. I don't move like I used to. I can't do a backflip. He goes, yet, Dad. You can't do it yet. And it was like a proud father moment, counselor moment. Like, yes, here we go. Here's an optimist at a young age.
I love that. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, some of the things that you are preaching to your clients, ideally are becoming things that are non-factors for the people who you're interacting with on a regular basis. I think when I think of narratives as well, something surrounding young people and just youth sports as a whole, the conversation between competition and fun, and sometimes it taking too much of time on one end of the spectrum where somebody loses the fun because there's too much of an emphasis on competition and wins and losses. And what are some things you've seen surrounding the narrative of competition versus fun? And do you have any recommendations for parents and coaches out there?
My first instinct and my first question is, why do they have to be competing against each other? Right? We can have competition with fun. And in fact, a lot of us, especially anybody who has been in high performing sports, it's not fun to go play against someone who's not competitive, to go onto a field and know you're going to win 14-0 and not really have to break a sweat. The fun is in the competition. The fun is in the unknown. And so we go into that thought process of, well, why do we play? Why do we like competition? But we have to have some sense of fun. Even the professional athletes out there, you watch them train on a day-to-day basis, they are pushing themselves to extreme limits. But you can also see that smile on their face. You can see when they check out. You can see when they do a fun practice session. Those coaches realize that too. We can only push ourselves so far for so long. So there has to be a fun component. There has to be an enjoyment. There has to be a reason for yourself. So my biggest advice to parents, to the young athletes is to not lose that sense of fun. Remember why you started. Remember why you enjoyed showing up to practice at 5 years old and 6 years old. And what about that sport matters to you? And embrace that, because that's what's going to help you when you're tired. That's going to help you in college when you're on your 2-a-days and it's the 5th day of that and you're exhausted and every muscle aches. You know what? This is fun. I love being here. I enjoy this. I can't wait to get back out here again. And when we can push through those moments, that goes beyond just being competitive.
I love that, and I really appreciate it. I think hearing things like embrace the process are things that I think a lot of high performers, highly successful coaches, highly successful athletes we'll talk about. I really appreciate our time today. I want to give you a chance to just talk a little bit more about kind of what you have going on. I know that you have an online course in addition to your regular business. Share a little bit with the audience about what you have going on.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. So MBS Performance Counseling focuses on our adolescent athletes and how to arm them with the skills mentally and emotionally to compete at high levels. So we focus on the physical, the technical, and the tactical, like I said earlier, but we're missing out on that mental emotional approach. So it's not waiting for something to go wrong for these athletes. We're really looking to be proactive and help build those skills for their success. Moving forward, it's really looking at how to scale this business, how to get myself out in front of more and more athletes, coaches, parents, so we can have a collective message. So one way we're doing that is through the Perform with Purpose online course that we're building. So it'll be 10 different modules, lessons that you can work through at your own pace with worksheets that we give to our clients that we work with one-on-one. So you can really take the lessons into your home and learn how to apply those in your everyday life.
And for people who want to stay connected with you, maybe reach out through either social media or email.
Yeah, on Facebook, MBS Counseling, Instagram, MBS Counseling, and also at Twitter is Counseling MBS is our handles there. I'm very active on Facebook. That's probably the best place to reach me. Also, our website is www.mbs, that's mind, body, spirit, performancecounseling.com.
Awesome. Ryan, I can't thank you enough for being on here today. I think there's some huge things that ideally coaches, parents, young athletes even will take from, and hopefully it'll make significant impact on their life.
And Josh, thank you for having me. I love what you're doing here, and I cannot wait to keep collaborating with you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the High Performers Podcast. We want to encourage you to join the conversation, access the show notes, and catch our latest episodes on the website. Please head to highperformerspodcast.com. And if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast. Until next time, thanks again for listening.